Let's talk herd.
And I look to the horses and say, what can I learn? Like, what can I learn about going from intensity and play, or, maybe it's a boundary conversation, or a difficult conversation with a person that may involve needing to set some boundaries. And I watched the horses negotiating boundaries. And then all of a sudden it's like back to grazing, and I said, wow, there's ease in that. And that has prompted me to explore those themes in my life and how they relate to me as a human. So anyways, I think just kind of speaking to what you shared of, allowing the horses to be horses.
Yeah.
And, seeing, what we can do as humans to allow for that space and to see their contentness and happiness. And I think just that joy that kind of comes with the congruence of feeling like, wow, you've just landed in, what you were meant to do and what you were meant to be. And, when horses are afforded and allowed that space to be horses, for me, that's where the magic really happens. And I always feel so blessed that the horses have, in my life up to this point, have been incredibly welcoming of me in that space. And to the point where I feel like, there's times that's like, wow, I feel like I've almost been initiated in a way. It says, yes, you're a human, you're not a horse, but you're welcome in our space. And you're welcome in our space. And I can feel that by knowing that they're displaying, their own natural behaviors, that show that they're feeling safe and they're feeling comfortable. And it has nothing to do with me asking anything of them except, may I be here? And so I think that's really neat. I hope that kind of answered your question a little bit, but I felt there was like 10 threads hanging out in the ether there. I could pull any one of them, but hopefully that one is a good one.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that we can talk about, but I love I really think that there is a language that that's universal to all, everyone with consciousness, basically. And I think, when the horses are living their fullest life, then that's when we see it, like you say, that's when that energy, I always call it energy, just because it feels like the closest way of describing it, the closest description for what it is. And I think maybe that's why for us that's the easiest way to feel it and sense it, because it's just strongest when they're being horses. But then I think the more that you, like you say, the more you go within when you're around them, the more you're aware of your own energy and how it's kind of reflected back to you in terms of them. And I am really fascinated by, like you say, when they change, when they do things suddenly and they seem to do it all as a whole herd, and just getting into that receptive state where we can feel the energy that they're feeling. I think that's probably that would be really amazing, just to be absolutely in tune with that. And I do feel that that's possible, even though we're different species, because it does feel like it's a universal language. Because sometimes I've noticed when I do a healing with the herd, what I call herd assisted, because it's kind of more them doing a healing and I'm interpreting for them. And it seems like it's all of nature that's part of it. Like the birds and even the weather, like the wind might start and stop. And So I feel like there's just a flow that we can just become connected with, and then we just understand. And that's, that's a really powerful part of it, I think.
Oh, yes. I was just going to say I resonate very much with what you're sharing, and I think that the energy being the common language, um, and kind of that shared connection. And
Mm.
I feel that you know from a human perspective and from my own experiences, when I am connected with that energy and the energy surrounding me, whether it's another person or specifically now we're speaking about, being with the horses and how, the land and the birds and the trees and the wind
Mm.
and the sun or the clouds, whatever it is, the rain, um, is all contributing to that. As a human, I do
Yeah.
have this ability, we collectively have this ability to go in or to go out. And I feel that
Yeah. Yeah.
continuing to remind myself, and it's, I, it's not wrong if I go up into my head or want to go out, and my head loves to explain things and, wants to understand and like to have this nice, neat definition in a box to completely
Yeah.
explain, what is going on and define it. And, in a language that I am, you know, understanding and that I've grown up speaking, and being able to explain it to someone. But I
Yeah.
recognize the more, when I do that, and I'm not saying that's wrong, it's an amazing ability that we have as humans that can support us, but it can also hinder us in many ways. Um,
Mm.
but I feel most connected to the horses when I am allowing myself that invitation to just go back into the feeling,
Mm. Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than the thinking and more cognitive space. And I've gotten really curious about that, because I feel that the horses, while they have their own unique cognitive ability, um, in my understanding of just horse behavior and what makes a horse, they're feelers.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And that makes, and I feel that that's one of the observable things, that I see them being so masterful with their energy and with these transitions of, like, running with
Mm.
the herd, and then all of a sudden it's back to grazing, or we could have a very high energy display of, boundary setting and personal space. And
Yeah.
it's not personal. And then we go back to grazing, or we go back to resting. Um, so I think that, that produces this really lovely mirror of, like, we have this ability as a human to be in this very cognitive space,
Mm.
but kind of coming back down into that feeling. And I feel that is, for me, in understanding and resonating with what you were speaking about, is just, that's what helps me stay connected to
Mm.
that energy, and stay connected to that common language. Because as soon as I get into a very highly cognitive space, that now starts taking some of that energy. And it's not that you can't be in both spaces at once, but, there's um,
Yeah.
the flow is a little bit different. And I feel that there's less of me that's available to listen
Yeah.
and feel and receive and respond to that energy, when I'm utilizing a good deal of it up here, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about, because I think, talking from the therapeutic perspective, like, I've always been quite interested, and it was maybe because of the first, not the first, but one of the teachers that I had when I was learning the craniosacral therapy, and he was very much into being able to interpret what you were feeling, and the more more you're able to interpret it, it actually strengthens. It's like a kind of positive cycle. that you feel more because you're interpreting it more more articulately, or yeah. So I'm just kind of just feeling into what you're saying, and like, because I definitely feel like it's a compromise still when I'm with the horses if I'm interpreting, because I feel like I want to be able to interpret what I'm feeling so that I can, but it's really about recording it and sharing it and, writing my blog and that kind of thing. Whereas,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it is a different space that you can go into when you just let all of that go, and you just allow yourself to be fully embodied. I don't know if that's the right word, but fully in that energetic field, and you're able to it's so difficult to, it's hard to explain in words, but it's like you're feeling it, you're being it as well as feeling it. It's like you can feel it in a different part of your mind. So it's like you're using your mind. I would call it like a sense picture.
Mm-hmm.
And that just feels really, I agree with you that when you're fully, it does take energy to do that. And when you're fully engaged with that, you can't really be, you might be able to memorize it, but it's not quite the same as, that halfway place where you're interpreting it at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And sometimes like the other day when I was doing a meditation and it wasn't with the horses, I just got the sense that I got the sense of how strongly or how frequently our mind and our belief system, because I felt it as an energy, how our mind can just disrupt our vibration, like our vibrational expression. And I could really feel it as a sort of energy that our mind just sort of pushes its way in and just blocks. And I think that's often what happens with the horses, because we're so, and it's difficult not to do that, because you're thinking, you tend to go into thinking it, am I in the right place? Anything that you think is doing that. So yeah, it's how would you say that you get into that space of 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 just engaging fully with the energy?
So for me, it has been a lot of, and I'm going to call it practice. I was resisting calling it practice, but I'm going to call it practice. It took,
Yeah.
I guess what I would term for myself is a lot of practice of being with the horses, whether it was standing with them, sitting with them, outside or inside the fence line, and allowing the I love that you mentioned meditation, and meditation is part of my practice, and I had taught meditation for several years, and it was interesting to kind of watch this evolution with the horses, because it was this process of meditation. I used to feel that meditation was all about just, okay, I had to quiet my mind, quiet my mind, quiet my mind, quiet my mind. When really what the process of meditation had become for me was just allowing things to flow through.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
Because there, whether it was the thoughts, emotions, energies, expressions, whatever, I'd say the same for movement, but that could be a whole different conversation. But kind of staying in this, particular focus right now, the meditation, how I became to understand meditation practice, and the horses assisted greatly with this, is just allowing it to flow through. Because there were those times early on when I would start sitting with the horses and it was like all of these things were coming up. It's like, am I doing this right? Am I in the right place? Am I responding correctly? It's, and I had to give, the more I tried to push that out, and the more I tried to just quiet that down and say, oh, I just want to be here. I just want to be here. I just want to be here. I just want to be connected. The more I kept trying to like push that out the door and then close the door on it, the more it kept coming in. And and I don't distinctly remember when this happened. And that's why I said, I wanted to resist calling this a practice, but it's still very much a practice. Is just going and engaging in the space, and going and engaging in the energy, or, the environment, or with the other being, the horse or the human, or whomever it may be. And just kind of practicing in that space of just being, feeling. I think there's other words that could be there that would feel resonant for individuals. But in part of the practice for me, there was definitely this allowing. It's like I had to allow that, the stuff, the stories, the judgments, the critiques, the wonderment, the curiosities, all of that. Like I just had to allow space for that to flow through. And when that had time to flow through, then I realized it's like, oh, it's a lot quieter right now. It's like, when did that happen? It's like the other things had a chance to go through, and then I noticed that things just naturally started to get quieter. And they're not always quiet. So I definitely don't want to put that out there. That's like, oh, things are always quiet for me now, and I can go out to the field, or wherever it is with the horses, and it's like I just expect things to be silent, and all of a sudden it's in this flow. It's like, well, I think there's magic in the other pieces that come up, but I know that since I've had that, I think more of a gross level of like my system, my system has become quieter. I have found that as this practice continues, it's become more easeful, and it's less time now that it usually takes to kind of drop into that space of just of connection and feeling and resonance. And it's not about it being completely void of things, which I think sometimes, I've recognized as kind of a common perception sometimes of meditation and connection in that way. But then it's like when things are quieter, and when they've come to a space where they're like, that becomes more of the baseline, that I hear the things I need to hear, and I'm more, I have a better ability to notice the things that I'm being asked to notice, whether it's the birds or the wind or a turn of an ear, or, the quality of what's being held in a gaze or a movement. And
it almost feels to me like what you're doing is becoming a channel. So there might or there might not be something coming through the channel. Quite often there will be, but sometimes, but it's not really about that. I think that's where we maybe can get confused, that we're looking for that flow rather than looking for the channel, the space. Like you become a space.
Right. And I think it's that, I think the looking, it's like, am I constantly looking for the thing? Where's the thing that's coming through? Where's the piece of information or the grand insight that I get, and, or the answer that I'm looking for. And it's, but as you said, I think it's literally just becoming and being and practicing availability. And as you talked about the the channel and just being a kind of an open channel for, for what wants to flow through.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
and sometimes that is simply quietude.
Mm.
Other times it might be something that's very subtle and quiet.
Mm.
But I feel too that it's, I recognize this own pattern within myself, that I was missing so many things because it was like I was always waiting for the big thing to come.
Yes.
That groundbreaking aha. And the ahas, I don't want to downplay the ahas. The ahas are always very amazing. And but I think there's so many things to celebrate. We don't need to just reserve the celebrations for the ahas, but we can not reserve celebrations, but we can celebrate, just when quietude and space comes in, when it's that little piece, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think it is being that receptive, in that receptive state, that is what feels so good. And that's the freedom you were talking about. And I think then, in a way, then you're in a place where you can hear any form of infinite intelligence, but it's not really about what you feel. It's just about being able to feel it, being in that. And it always feels to me like it's a different direction from the direction of doing, and like we were saying at the beginning, of pushing and driving the horse, and having an agenda, and when you stop and you become receptive, it just allows a different relationship, I think, to be able to form. And I'm quite positive that there will be a lot within that. It's not just about sitting in the field. I think that we will, experience some amazing things with horses. But it's like we have to become that shape enough. And like you say, it's almost like a muscle that has to get bigger and stronger. And we have to get steady enough with it, I think, that it can start to allow those things to happen, those amazing things that I think we're just giving space to.
Yeah. Yeah. I connect with that very much. It's, I think it's like my human self says, oh, it'd be nice to can we just not walk into that room and turn the light on and see everything all at once? And,
yeah.
because there's so much. It's like, there's so much there, and wow, just how amazing. But, I really, for myself, I believe that, things have happened in my life, and I have developed more of a relationship of trusting that, and trusting the flow and the timing, and that I'm not meant to know everything, and that I am part of I think just an evolution. I'm one piece in a much bigger picture.
Like
and
a
I look at that
tapestry.
as like, like a tapestry. And it's, I think listening to, well, what part am I being asked to play? And again, kind of coming back into that space of, for me, I've recognized that's less cognitive. The cognitive certainly supports me in that space, but it's almost like a secondary support. And I've been asking myself for my primary support to be my intuition, and feel and have the cognitive piece. Okay, based on that information, like how do I take the next step, or what's involved? So, I think there's such a process in this continued development of an evolution of horse and human relationship. And like you said,
definitely.
it's just, to take that time and make that space that it's there. And, we get pieces of it as we take the time
Yeah,
to be available and
absolutely.
allow for what's there.
So would you, it almost seems like going against that a little bit to ask, but what do you like do with that? Are you doing something with that? Do you see people, or is it more of a personal research, or are you working with clients?
Well, thanks for asking. I feel that I am in a seed tending space right now. Um,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
that's
and I
nice.
feel that um, I feel at one point I almost got a little ahead of myself because I was so excited to um, kind of share, through personal experience of like, oh gosh, this is what's happening. And I know that I'm doing that, but it's,
Yeah.
my human tendencies say, okay, now we got to do that at like, 80 miles per hour and, have all these things ready. And I realized, and the
Yeah.
horses, I look to the horses for guidance on this because, I'm their partner in this and they're my partner in this. And, it's like, well, what's the pace we follow? And I felt that, I was really getting like almost, it's like, well, what you're kind of trying to be towards the middle of this, where really, come back to right now. And it's, so I feel like I'm in the seed tending space, and um, what I'm very excited about, um, co-creating and co-facilitating, um, with the horses is this space of, what right now is termed embodied leadership. And it's really, embodied leadership has
Okay.
been
Yeah.
it's like all encompassing of our conversation that we've had today. It's very
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
relationship. It's like, what's our self responsibility? What's the intention? Coming back to the space of feeling and being, um, interested and curious and committed to a practice of, continued self awareness. But what I feel that the horses have really brought to the table, which is again where I think I got completely ahead of myself. I felt like, you know, I've been in the, kind of yoga movement, mindfulness, meditation space for, um, gosh, many years now.
Yeah.
And I felt like, wow, I felt such a segue of this of like, wow, the horses have so much that they're offering, in the space
Yeah.
of, awareness and being and feeling and embodiment. Um, but where I got way ahead of myself was that, what, this really is about relationship. And we've talked so much about that in our in our time together. And on the relationship side, I don't think that that's necessarily limited, um, to just kind of um, I think like a personal health and personal growth and development space,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
or community. I feel that what I've heard from from people that are, that have their own horses in their care. I haven't talked to one, um, person that hasn't been interested in wanting to develop more deeply the
Mm.
relationship between themselves and their horse.
Yeah.
And I felt
Yes.
that the horses were kind of pointing to this all along, and it just takes me a little. It takes me the time it takes me to to get the message sometimes. Um, so I am very hopeful that, as I kind of enter in some more collaborative and co-creation space with the horses, that, we'll see what type of spaces open up. I think right now it's, you know, there's kind of infinite possibilities, and I'm in that place where I'm just listening of like, what
Yeah.
will it be? What does it look like? And where should we start? So I am spending a lot of time out in the field right now, and
Yeah.
just kind of connecting in with their feedback and what they're saying. But I feel what I'm getting right now is that this is not going to be limited in a space of just, you know, growth and development. I think that it can be for people that are that care for horses and that have horses in their lives, as well as people that do not. But I feel that I was kind of initially excluding that category. I wasn't meaning to, of like, oh, well, you know, what benefit can I bring to the horse community? But it is also a newer space for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it's almost the place where there is most potential for this, because it doesn't really matter where someone starts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel that the horses have said, this is, yeah, this needs to be included
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
in the work. So we're continuing to create and collaborate, and I'm very excited to see kind of where things go, and
Yeah.
you know, what shared spaces and offerings present themselves. But um, what I'm feeling right now is it's very much about relationship, and kind of how we tend our own self relationship and the relationship we have with
Mm,
things in our daily living.
yeah. Yes.
And different settings and our environment, you know, where we are and who we're interacting with, all of that translates to our relationship to ourself,
Definitely.
and the relationship that we have with horses and other beings. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of people like you that are in that space of just, discovering this new way of this new it's not even really an approach, it's like a space, I think, of understanding and and figuring out how to bring that to the horse world.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose for me, my if I went deep into it, what I really care about, I don't know if you can quantify caring about one thing more than another, but just the horses are really, really important to me, and their quality of life with us. And it makes such a difference to them when they're seen by us. So I feel like it is what you're saying about bringing it to the horse world is really, really important. In a way, the horses can help us, but we can also help them in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think there's what comes up for me, and I feel that a passion for me, and I love that you use the word seen, is
Mm.
being able to just to see to see more wholeness, to see more of our own innate wholeness. And I feel that in doing
Yes.
that, we are able to see the innate wholeness that exists in others. And, you know, specifically
Yes.
speaking, you know, how beautiful is that to see the innate wholeness of a horse partner,
Mm.
or the horses as a collective. And I know that, you know, however this develops, it will not be necessarily linear or prescriptive like we talked about, but um, you know, it does come back to that, you know, that relationship, and that, I think, that need or desire um, to be seen,
Yeah.
and you know, and being able to, and that, and relationship exists in that. So as you know, we're able to kind of have that ourselves, and feel more of that, whatever the wholeness feels like to us, or the freedom feels like to us, or the joy feels like to us.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, being able to be curious and cultivate that and allow that to evolve within ourselves. And as we do so, it's so reciprocal to our other relationships.
Absolutely.
And how beautiful to hold that for, you know, our horse partners and the horses as a collective. Yeah.
Yeah.